Let's continue our conversation about money. If you tuned into the last episode a few weeks ago, we were talking about how to raise your rates with confidence, how to future proof your rates against things like inflation and tariffs and economic ups and downs, how to always make sure that you are profitable and making enough money to support your lifestyle. There's another side to the money conversation that I kind of want to dive into today, and that is surrounding setting minimums for your services. So that way you're always protecting the value of your time. Welcome back to the Swears and Does Hair podcast. I'm your host, Sue Minsky, bridal hairstylist and makeup artist for the last 18 years, turned business coach for the hair and makeup bridal industry. So, this week we are talking about service minimums, why you need them, what you can do to start implementing them if you haven't, or what tweaks you need to make to your process to protect your peace when it comes to your minimums. And then later on in the episode, make sure that you are still listening in because we're going to be talking about ways to start implementing your boundaries, conversations that you can have, and different ways to tweak your process so that it is less confusing or hard for your clients to get on board with the whole service minimum thing. How to make it not sound so much or feel so much like you're just being a hard ass and you're being selfish and that you don't want to go out there and just work for the bride, et cetera, et cetera. Because how you present your policies and your boundaries can make or break how they affect your business. So make sure that you stay tuned for later on in the conversation when we talk about how to have these types of conversations with your clients. Before we dive into the rest of today's conversation, I do want to just take care of a few little housekeeping things. If you are listening on Apple, on Spotify, or any other audio podcast format, you're gonna want to go over to my YouTube channel and subscribe there. May is my renewal season for Kajabi, and I have been using this platform for the last 5 years to deliver my coaching and my courses, and it also hosts my podcast. It is an amazing platform and I absolutely love it, but it is a little bit pricey. And I am shifting how I do my coaching and my courses this year. I am taking a bit of a step back from my courses and focusing a little bit more on one-on-one coaching. So, how I deliver these experiences to my clients might be shifting after May. If I do decide to go with a different platform and a different method, that does mean that my podcast is no longer going to be hosted on the Kajabi platform and distributed out to the podcast players. I'm still playing around with technology to see how I can continue the podcast through these platforms. I'm not 100% sure what it's going to look like in the future moving forward. However, I do know that my podcast is up on YouTube. Those videos get edited and get posted just like the audio version. So if you want to make sure that you don't miss anything, go ahead, click the link in the description box and make sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel. Now, back to the conversation surrounding service minimums. The first thing that we need to talk about is why we are actually implementing service minimums in our business. What purpose does it serve us as the artist and as the business owner? Because there always seems to be a conflict between the consumer and the artist. What does the purpose of this boundary or this policy serve in the eyes of the artist versus in the eyes of the consumer? And this is where the consumer can start to give us pushback. It can feel to them almost like they're being taken advantage of. They have their set of needs, and sometimes it comes into conflict with the set of needs of what we have as the business. And there's just this pushback because they don't understand why this is in place, other than to just be a disservice to somebody like them. When it comes to figuring out your service minimums, I have a whole PDF and training series, The Ultimate Pricing Guide for Bridal Artists, where I discuss how to calculate your minimums. We still have to think about our minimums in terms of profit. Minimum is not breaking even. Minimum still needs to afford us enough profit to continue to stay in business. When we have amounts over our minimums, that's great. We make extra profit, but our minimums should still be profitable. If we only end up booking our minimums, if the economy continues to go the way that it is and you are still getting business, but people are only really booking at the minimums because that's all that they can afford, that could be the reality for you, and you don't have the control over that. If it meets your minimum threshold, you can take that booking, or you can run the risk of holding out for something that ends up being more. You should be comfortable booking at your minimums without freaking the fuck out because you're like, oh my God, it's just my minimum. I'm just breaking even. How am I supposed to make any money? Your minimum still needs to incorporate a healthy amount of profit. Otherwise, it's not a minimum. It is a break even. And that is just a terminology that I want to really clarify for people. Minimum does not mean break even. When businesses put physical products on sale, they're cutting out a percentage of their profit. They are not cutting into their production costs. They are never going below what their production cost is. They're never just breaking even. The cost that they incorporate into it is a high enough profit that they can offer discounts at times. So think of it like that. You're not ever going to offer discounts, but if you're only booking at your minimum, it should still have enough profit that you can keep your business running, only running it at that much. So that's just something that I wanted to really make clear before we go into the rest of today's episode. What I'm talking about when I'm saying service minimums, it's not your break-even point. For the love of God, it is not your break-even point. It is a profit still. But you're willing to only make a smaller amount of profit to have guaranteed income versus holding out and risking that unsold inventory of your time for a higher profit margin. Time is a finite resource for us as hairstylists and makeup artists. We are one human being. There are 52 weekends in every year. We also have a life outside of our wedding business. Okay. We cannot manufacture more weekends. We cannot manufacture more time. We are not a florist who can just buy more flowers and work throughout the week to create more bouquets, or the baker or somebody else who delivers physical products. We have to have a minimum to make it worth our entire Saturday that we are reserving for that one bride. Now, you might be somebody who decides that they want to serve brides only. That is completely okay, but it needs to still be a minimum investment of money to make it worth turning away a potentially higher project. We don't have as many resources available to us to compound our income. We only have so many dates that we can sell to our clients. We're not selling them services, we are selling them time. Remember in the last episode, I was talking about time and the value of our time. It's the same thing when we set a service minimum. We are selling hours of our day. We are selling days off of our calendar. We have an inventory of time. What we do during that time is physically do hair or do makeup or do admin. But every time you are performing a task for your business, you have to think of it as your inventory of time. That is what you are actually selling to your client. Now, the services that we do within that time frame can vary and can be customized for that client, but we're still just essentially at the end of the day selling them our time, and the value of that time increases with limited availability. So, if we are going to turn down a bride that maybe has 5 people and is a $2,000 income because we have reserved an entire day, we need to know that that amount of money that we're making on that particular date is going to help us to pay our bills. When we set a minimum, it serves a dual purpose. It not only protects the value of our time and guarantees that we are able to continue to pay our bills, pay ourselves a livable wage, reinvest on the products that it takes to run our business, keep our car in working order, pay for our gas so that we are able to physically get there to our clients. It needs to not just keep our business running, but it needs to pay for our lives. And a portion of it needs to be set aside for things like taxes, for emergency funds, for reinvestment in education. We need to have a high enough profit margin when we sell our inventory of time that we can keep things running so that we still have a business in order to sell more time to other brides down the road. So that is why we need to have a guaranteed income coming in. We take our time, we sell it to people, and we get money back, and it is inconsistent. We have seasons, we have income highs, and we have income lows throughout the year, but we still need to be smart. We still need to run our business with that mindset that we need to have a certain level of guaranteed income throughout the year in order to stay in the black. Otherwise, we go into the red and eventually we go out of business. If we continue to run our business with bad business practices and poor financial management because we are living in a scarcity mindset and we are accepting whatever job comes our way, whether or not it's financially worth it to us, we're eventually going to run ourselves out of business. And if we have brides who are still booked, they run the risk of us going out of business before their wedding date comes around. So if you have people who push back on it, it could be as simple as really just explaining that to them. We have a service minimum to guarantee that we have enough income coming in to stay in business. So by the time your wedding day rolls around, I haven't gone under. I haven't decided that something else is more worth my time than showing up for your wedding day. And that might be a wake up call to some people where they're like, oh, yeah, I didn't even think of it that way. Because you have to remember the consumer, they're thinking about what's in it for them. What is the benefit to them? They don't see that there is any benefit whatsoever between you saying, I have a minimum in order to come out for your wedding. They're thinking, oh, that's about you. That does nothing for me. That has no value for me. Why should I give a shit? It's to guarantee that you're still in business by the time their wedding day rolls around, that you haven't decided to go off and make money somewhere else because people are being fucking cheap. That's the long and the short of it. But if you can put it out there in a professional way and kind of talk more about your policies in a way that talks about how those policies benefit the person, the consumer, the bride, instead of here's why I have to put this in place to protect me. How can you reframe that? And that's really just kind of like a really good guideline when it comes to pretty much anything in your business and communicating your policies or anything with brides, your pricing. It's just sales psychology. What's in it for them? How does this thing that you need to communicate benefit them? If you can learn to master the skill of articulating what's in it for them, you're going to get people who are right on board right along with you because they're going to be like, I'm doing this for me now. They're not doing it for you anymore. They're doing it for them. And they're always going to seek out the opportunity or the option or whatever that serves them the best. We set the policies to run our business to serve us as a business first. Always, first and foremost, we need to meet the needs of us as a human being, then our business as a business to stay in business, and then we follow that up with the needs of the client. That is all going to overlap in the long run. In a successful business, those three things, those three sets of needs are always met with every healthy policy for a business. It becomes a balance. Your needs as the business owner are met, your business needs are met so that it can continue to grow and flourish, and your clients' needs are met as well. So that's how you know that a policy is actually a good policy, because it meets all three. How you articulate, most people come from a place of this is my policy and this is why. Either it serves me as a human or it serves my business, and they really forget to go into the articulation of here's how the policy actually benefits the clients. And that's when they get people being pissed off and pushing back and questioning them, rather than being like, yep, got it, I'm on board with that. So now that we've gotten the why out of the way, let's get a little bit deeper into the what. I've already started to touch on that, how your policies and how your boundaries, whether it's service minimums or your prices or your travel or really any policy in your business, these tips that I'm going to go over with you in these strategies can be applied to any of them. We've talked about how to frame that conversation so that they understand that you're actually doing this to help them as well. But before we ever even get to that point, what are the strategies that we can put in place beforehand? I am all about helping business owners solve problems as they come up. It's one of my favorite things to do inside of my coaching. When we meet for our 2 coaching sessions a month, every other Monday or every other Wednesday or whatever we decide on, I start out with saying, okay, what issues have you run into in the last 2 weeks? What problems can we work on? What troubleshooting can I help you navigate through? It's one of my favorite things. But after we navigate the conversation of like, here's how to handle this situation that's popped up in the immediate. Okay, here's what I think you should do. Here's how I think you should communicate that to your client, whatever. Then the second piece of the puzzle, it's not just fixing the immediate problem. It's not just throwing water on the fire and putting out the immediate fire. It's looking around and going, what caught fire in the first place? What happened at the outset that caused this? And what can we do inside the business to prevent this from happening again? So these are the types of strategies that I want to discuss with you now. And again, this can be applied to any policy or any boundary that you want to put into place. How can we set up and make tweaks to how we're running the business right now so that it doesn't continue to be a problem? Now, I've had conversations with so many different bridal artists in the last few months, and a lot of Facebook groups and other chat groups and things like that. I'm a part of so many different conversations with bridal hairstylists and makeup artists all over the country and really all over the world. I want to keep my finger on the pulse of what's going on for everybody versus just being like, okay, I don't do weddings anymore. I don't book my own clients. I had these years of success. Let me just become a coach and continue to coach on what the problems I saw in my own business versus like, what are you guys actually focusing on now? What is popping up for you now? And one of the things that has become really recurrent in the last few months that I've seen is brides who are getting closer to the wedding happening here in 2025, usually with spring or into early summer. They are essentially realizing that they don't have the budget for beauty services like they thought they did, or their bridal party is no longer able to pay and they are trying to remove services. I've heard it I don't even more times than I can count, honestly, at this point. One person, we were having a conversation, it was on somebody else's thread, and they commented and they were like, yeah, I had a bride try and go from 16 services to 6, 10 services. Even if they're just like only charging $100, that's $1,000 off of that service contract that this bride was trying to pull off like a few weeks before the wedding. That's just absolutely insane. The things that are going on in the American economy right now and the political landscape is creating so much financial insecurity for so many people. And the people that, they've been booked for a year in early 2024, people were starting to pull back on some of their spending. And an election year, if you study economics, you'll know that election years, people usually tighten up the purse strings. They are just less likely to spend a bunch of money, knowing that there's going to be a potential big change in politics and how that's going to affect their budgets for the following year. Whether it's a conscious thing or a subconscious thing, people tend to pull back. So 2024 was already like a lot of people in the wedding industry were starting to feel those purse strings tightening up. But there were people out there that were like, no, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to book and I want this big wedding or whatever. And now 2025 has hit. The wedding is looming. It's getting close. Final balance payments are starting to come due. And they're like, we don't have the money now that we thought we would. We don't have the financial stability and security that we did a year ago. So if you are somebody who is struggling with this in your business, I want you to know right now, you are absolutely not alone. A lot of people are going through it. Just because a lot of people are going through it doesn't mean that you have to suck it up. We have contracts for a reason. And if you don't, there's your problem number one. You're really fucking yourself, okay? That $500 you didn't want to spend on a contract could now cost you $1,000 in less services. Or if you don't have a contract and you are just going to select cash on the day of because it feels nice to have dollar bills in your hand and feel like you can maybe hide that and not have to pay taxes on it or just whatever, run your business like a business, okay? Have a contract. Don't collect your payment on the day of because you are leaving yourself open to getting screwed out of the money that is owed you. That's problem number one and slash number two. Stop dealing in cash and make sure that you have a contract. Your contract should have a clause in there about reduction of services and that it is not allowed. You need to understand how to have that conversation with clients. And maybe it's a good thing now that you're running into it more often because now you can practice having those conversations if it's a problem that you've never had before. Because if you started your business in the last few years with a more fruitful economy, so to speak, and a wedding industry that was in the midst of a huge boom, you may have never had to really have these conversations. You may have had one or two people who came in and wanted to subtract a service or two. And now we're hitting a place where, economically, a lot of people just don't have the money flow that they did. And that is very unfortunate for them. However, we have to remember, again, we are a business. Our whole purpose is to make money. If the purpose was to just do hair or just do makeup, we would fucking do that shit for free. We are here to make money. We have bills to pay too. Somebody else's hard time should not be the domino effect that topples over onto us and leaves us scrambling, leaves us trying to figure out how am I going to pay my mortgage this month? And we need to be firm in the conversations that we have surrounding that because it's not fair to us to take on the financial burden of somebody else who has known for a year that they're going to have a financial responsibility. However, anybody on the internet tries to make you feel bad about your job and tries to call you unreasonable, fuck them, block them, whatever, tune them out. It's not unreasonable. And people know long enough in advance what their bill is going to be. It's not like we're springing this on them. It's not like they're showing up on the wedding day expecting to pay $40, $50 and we're like, actually it's 400. They knew. So release the emotion behind that. It's their choice. What can we do about this other than having conversations with people in the back end? Afterwards, now that we're running into this situation, we're going to start putting those fires out and we're going to get really good at putting those fires out we are going to become firefighters. All right. We are going to have these conversations and we are going to move on from them. What policies and strategies are we now going to be putting in place to prevent that from happening in the future? Whether the economy goes up, continues to go down, stays as it is a situation that you will run into multiple times in your career. I've been doing this for 18 years. Regardless of what the economy was like, I've had to have this conversation multiple times with people. And the policies that I put in place in my own business really helped to prevent them. But they have to be there, and they have to be there in multiple places. You can't just say it's in my contract, because fuck that. People don't read contracts. If you think that people are going to sit there and read through every word of an 8-page document, memorize it, and understand this is the policies of one of 20 vendors that they have hired. We do this all the time. We understand policies. We understand service minimums. We understand having to pay for things. We understand all of these little clauses, because remember, we are having so many of these conversations every single day. They are not. Okay? Think about your very first year in business. There were so many conversations you'd never had before. You didn't know how to navigate. There were policies you hadn't even considered until after you had a situation blow up in your face and you were like, never want to do that again. Let's fix that problem. Let's put a policy in place. Let's add something to the contract. Let's create a contract. Let's create this process. You created a system and a plan to prevent that situation from happening ever again. That is what it feels like to be a bride. They've literally never done this before. So if you are relying on a contract to have this conversation, you are being a lazy business person. And I know people don't want to hear that. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. It does not matter that it's in your contract unless you're in front of a judge suing somebody. Your contract is just the piece of paper to allow you to enforce your policies after the fact. After somebody has already tried to violate that policy, you can go back to it and be like, no, actually, it was there. It is your responsibility as a business owner to be proactive and to have the conversations with your clients multiple times in multiple ways so that they understand them and they follow those rules. Have you ever been somewhere out in public and there's a really stupid fucking sign that's pretty much like common sense? Like, please don't go swimming with the alligators. You know why that sign is there? Because some dumbass tried to swim with the alligators. People need to be told not to do dumb shit multiple times. They need that sign on like every fence surrounding the alligators because some idiot will try and think that they can swim with them. All right. It's frustrating as a business owner to have to be like, why should I even have to say this? It should be common sense. But unfortunately, that is the world that we live in. So you need to start putting up your dumb people signs in your business and frame it not as dumb people signs, but just, hey, here's how it's going to benefit you. Here's how this policy is going to make your life better. Again, if we go back to the policy that I was talking about of how to frame things, the signs aren't saying, please don't climb into the alligator enclosure and go swimming with them, because we don't want to have to file the paperwork. We don't want to have to contact your family and let them know you were a dumbass and went swimming with alligators and now you're dead. They frame it as, don't go in here because you'll be dead and that's a bad thing for you. Think of it like that. All right. The things in your business, you need to tell people these things and always frame it as, here's why you need to follow this policy because here's why it benefits you. So where can we insert these things into our business? Where can we start having these conversations in non-confrontational ways? How can we say to people, here are my service minimums, or insert whatever policy or boundary or whatever that you want to talk about. Here's why you need to follow this. Here's why it's going to benefit you. The number one thing, we already talked about it, have it in your contract terms, but that cannot be the only place. That is where you can go back to and you can refer to people and be like, hey, you signed here, it was in the contract, so you've already agreed to this. But before they ever get to that, you need to have the conversation with them. You need to let them know, where's the very first place that people come into contact with your business? Often it's either your website or social media. So it needs to be in both of those places because those are most likely first contact places for your business. Social media, you can create reels or carousels or frequently asked questions highlight on your profile. You can talk about it in stories. How do people ask that question? How do they come to you and say, I'm just a bride, will you come out for me? That's a really low barrier entry point to the conversation because you're not coming straight out of the gate and being like, here's my policy, you have to pay me this or I'm not going to show up. It can just be framed from the point of the consumer. Do you have a service minimum? Will you come out just for me? And then you can frame your answer and here's why yes, so that it benefits you. Put that in your stories, save it to a highlight, take that, turn it into a reel, take your caption with your answer and break it up, put those on different carousel slides and repost those frequently. Don't just do it once because that is treating it like your contract. You're expecting people to go searching for the information that they don't know that they need to know. So you need to consistently present the information to them. And if you get really tired of saying the same thing over and over and over again, schedule shit. Have somebody or a program post stuff for you. It's posting it over and over again on your behalf to get the message out there to people, to drive that point home to them. And you don't have to mentally be a part of that process other than creating that system. So you don't have to hear yourself repeat yourself a million times because it becomes really hard to continue to enforce a boundary when you are just sick and tired of hearing the boundary and you're just like, whatever. Like if you're a mom and you have had to tell your kids the same thing a million freaking times over and over again, by the end of it, by like 1,000,001, you're just like, fine, whatever. I don't even fucking care anymore. I'm sick and tired of having this conversation. So I'm just going to check out. I'm not even really going to enforce it anymore because I'm so sick and tired of hearing myself say these things. You have to treat your social media the same way. Create that conversation that one time, multiply it and have something or someone else posted on your behalf so that it becomes something that's automatically repeated and is not going to wear away on you as a person. So that is a way to just really infuse it seamlessly into your social media. And you should go through and you should create these types of posts for all of your policies. Anything that you're like, but it's in my contract, but it's on the frequently asked questions on my website. Turn it into content. Stop trying to chase viral ideas and trends and hacks and whatever. Just be super clear with your policies. Every single frequently asked question on your website can be multiplied into so much content that you can just schedule to post on your behalf. And you have filled up so much of your content calendar just by continuing to reiterate your policies and your boundaries and framing it in the way that supports the client's needs. And it just ends up fulfilling so many of your needs. Your boundaries are enforced. People aren't pushing back. You're creating a bunch of content consistently. People are respecting you as a business because you're upfront with your policies and your boundaries. They know what to expect. It leads to a better client experience in the long run, which includes them referring and bringing you more business. Like, it's so low lift. It is so easy to do. And I see so many people who do not. They will only post about their policies when they see somebody else doing a reel about it that's doing really well. And then they take it and they copy it and they don't understand the process behind why they're just copying somebody else. And then they're getting frustrated when it's not actually helping to build their business because they just copied somebody once and expected it to work for forever when like 1% of your audience ever even saw that and a bunch of strangers. So put it on your social media, put it on your website, put it on your frequently asked questions page. And again, when you are framing these things, when you are doing your copy, when you're writing the words that are on there, put yourself in the shoes of the bride. What does your bride need to hear about this policy to understand and get on board and be like, yeah, you know what? That makes sense. This is how this benefits me. I am now okay with this policy. Now that we've gotten first contact out of the way, social media, repeated a bunch of places on social media. We have it on the frequently asked questions on the website. It's something that discusses your pricing. So guess where the next most logical place for it to go? The pricing page on your website, not just in frequently asked questions of, I'm just a bride. Will you come out just for me? Do you have a minimum? Put it right there at the very top. In order to book, a minimum amount of services is required, and go into the detail on that. Kind of side note when it comes to that, don't do number of services. Don't do number of services. It should be a minimum amount. How much money? You don't pay your bills in I did hair and makeup for 4 people. How much money does that bring you? That's how you know whether or not you're making enough income. Set it based on a dollar amount. And that way, if somebody really wants to book you, you can say, my minimum for a wedding booking is $1,000. You might find somebody who's like, I don't care that it's $1,000 and I only have 2 people. I'll pay the $1,000 for me and 2 other people to get our makeup done by you. And they book you. You're doing less services, but you're still getting paid your minimum. That's fine. Less work, you still make the same amount of money. Frame it in a way that benefits them, not, well, ask your friends, ask your mother, ask your grandmother, ask the search for more services. No. Frame it in a way of saying, I'm happy to still come out and do it for you. You can still get what you want, but this is what it's going to cost you. The money is all that matters at the end of the day. It doesn't matter how many services you're doing. So if you're going to end up doing less and they get what they want, what is the problem? It frames it in a different way that makes sense to them rather than them looking at it and going, oh, I have to try and convince 2 more people to come and get their hair and makeup done. It frames it as more work for them to get a head count minimum versus if I can just spend $1,000. So put it on your pricing page on your website. You should have a page of your website that discusses your prices. It should not be hidden. It should not be hidden. In today's society, it should not be hidden. If you are hiding your prices, is because you do not believe in them. You do not think you are worth the number on the page. Otherwise, that number would not intimidate you. If it intimidates somebody, guess what? They're not your client. They're going to be intimidated either way, whether they know at the beginning or they know later. They're going to say no and they're going to bounce. You need to be confident in your number. So it needs to be on your website. So your policies need to be right there, black and white on the page on your website. Now, you might deliver a PDF to them in their initial email. Guess what? Put it there too. It is part of the pricing. Just have a really well thought out way that you explain it and just copy and paste it. Use the same verbiage. We do not need to reinvent the wheel every time we take that information and put it in a new place. So now let's do a rundown. Where are we putting this information? We're putting it all over our social media so that it's really hard for them not to understand we have a minimum. It's going to go on the website in multiple places, on the pricing page, frequently asked questions. Maybe we have a testimonial highlighting where a bride said, I wanted them to come just for me and they were able to do it. And I didn't have to worry about finding all these other people, blah, blah, blah. If you can highlight it in a testimonial, do that as well. Make sure it's legitimate. Don't make up a testimonial just for the purpose of this. Find something that maybe discusses it. And that is a great testimonial to highlight how the policies benefited that bride, and it benefited that bride in such a way that she wanted to write about it afterwards. The other times that you want to have this conversation with the brides is literally just that, having conversations. If you do phone consults, make sure that you discuss that and let them know the head count that you're thinking about that would meet my minimum service amount of $1,000. Or if they're talking to you and maybe somehow they haven't found this information yet, have a conversation with them. Talk to them. Let them know, okay, you have 3 bridesmaids at such and such a head, and that only comes to $900. My minimum is $1,000. And then have ways that you can discuss with them, like, all right, we can add on another person. We can add on touch-up services. If you don't require a trial, be like, okay, add on a trial and that will add it up. However you want to help them get to that, you're not just putting a policy in place and being like, sorry, you no longer qualify. You're having a conversation where you're problem solving for them. You're saying, we don't meet the minimum. I'm not willing to back down on the minimum, but here's how we can get you to that point so that we can continue this relationship. You're problem solving for them. So that's another way to reframe it and have that conversation with them rather than being like, if you don't find more people, then I can't do this. That's not problem solving. That's not customer service. That is certainly not a luxury level conversation that you're having with people. Okay. So really think about how you articulate your boundaries and your policies to people. That's really the point that I want to drive home in this week's episode. It's all about how you frame things. It's all about how you articulate them to people. One person can have the same policy as another and it'll work for them, and it won't work for the other person because how they speak about it, how they talk and articulate that to their clients. So not only during the conversation that you're initially having before you ever move forward with the booking, when it comes time to set the head count, when you do the contract, you're going to need to have a conversation with them to confirm head count. And that is when you, again, can have the conversation with them. If they have bridesmaids who are on the fence, let them know. I know you have 3 more bridesmaids that are on the fence. Once people are on the contract, they cannot be removed. So if you have people who are wishy-washy now, there's a chance they're going to be wishy-washy closer to the wedding day. What we can do is we can leave them off the contract for right now, and we can add them closer to, here is my cutoff time. Here is how I need to be notified. Here is how much this is going to affect the contract in terms of pricing, whether or not you need to add an additional person, what the deadline is for finding any additional artists, if that's going to become a sudden requirement. Like, you go over all of those things with them and let them know how their headcount potential and their headcount right now affects pricing, affects timing, affects the ability for you to do your job. Have that conversation about dropping services and let them know, once we sign the contract and you've paid your retainer is non-refundable. So 50% of their service is going to already be paid for at the outset, and that is not going to be refunded if they change their mind. And then what policies do you have about substituting people? All those kinds of things. Service minimums and removal of services are almost the same conversation. That's why I've TikToked back and forth between discussing those 2 different things in this week's episode, because I want to talk about service minimums and how to communicate and facilitate that. But the removal of services is a current problem that I'm seeing a lot of artists facing, and they have very, very similar conversations, very, very similar solutions. You can substitute this conversation for either one of them. Make sure that it's articulated in all of these same places. Have these conversations. You're going to want to also place it in a check-in communication. That's 90 days out from the actual wedding day and then 45 days out. And these are a little bit more for like those headcount conversations and letting people know here's the timeline that we've created based on the headcount in your contract. If you have the ability to add people on and that deadline is approaching, have a conversation, let them know. Does anybody else want to add on? That also opens up the door for them to have the conversation of if they just really aren't fucking getting that people can't suddenly drop out, to remind them again and have that conversation where it's not like the week before their wedding where they're trying to suddenly remove services and you're like, what the fuck are you doing? Your wedding is in a week. I had an artist that I assist for who back in like January was like, okay, I have a May wedding and they want to add on services. They want to add in like 2 or 3 services. I let her know that the minimum to bring in an additional artist is going to be 4 services. She would need to add on 4 for me in order to bring you on, or pay the equivalent of 4 services plus the additional artist fee in order for me to hire you to come out. Are you available that day? And of course I was like, all right, yeah, I am. Let me know how it goes, et cetera, et cetera. Let me know what the timeline and how all of that affects. The bride was like, okay, let me confirm, let me get a head count of who wants to add on, blah, blah, blah. While having that conversation with her bridal party, I guess a bunch of them decided, no, actually, I don't even want it anymore. So instead of adding on, the bride came back and was like, actually, instead of adding on a couple more services and bringing in additional artists, actually, we want to cancel a couple of services. And she tried to cut the head count down in half. And the main artist was like, whoa, no, absolutely not. We can't do that. We can't cut services out of the contract. And she had to have that whole conversation with her. Whereas if she had waited and never had the conversation about adding on services, those bridesmaids probably would have waited until like March or April to try and cut services, because they are going to wait until the last second when they feel like, what are they going to do about it now? It's too last minute. They can't cancel on us. People will push it until a point where they think your back is against the wall, and then they will tell you. They will wait until they feel like you're in a position where you can't push back, you can't enforce boundaries because you have no more time, you have no more choice. So having these conversations with people and being like, no, we had this conversation multiple times, you understand. So no, it's actually not going to happen. And having these conversations earlier on in the process allows you to find better solutions for them and help them have a better experience from start to finish. So don't be afraid of having these conversations. Yes, it may get uncomfortable, but if you frame it of, okay, you have a problem now, here's how we're going to find the solution for you, here's what you can do because here's my policy and you said you understand that, it's going to be easier for you in the long run to enforce your boundaries. The last thing that I want to talk about, at least when it comes to removal of services, and this is a situation that I have run into personally, and I have seen other people run their business this way, and it is just something that I want to caution people. If you do allow removal of services, which is something that I absolutely do not recommend, but for whatever reason, and you have an additional artist who has come, do not take the services from them. It is your business and it is your choice to allow the removal of services. That should be the money that you are losing, not your additional artist. If you allow somebody to say, oh, one of the bridesmaids dropped out, so instead of doing hair for 4 people, you're now only going to be doing hair for 3 people, to your assistant, guess what? That's a really quick way to lose a great assistant. That's a really great way to say to them, fuck you, fuck your income. I don't respect you and I don't care about you as an artist. My income comes first. So fuck you. You might as well just be telling them fuck you. Okay? If you are going to not withhold your boundaries, if you are not going to have these conversations, if you are not going to have it in your contract, if you are not going to push back and say, no, this is the amount that's still owed, you are the one who deserves to lose the income from those lost services. Because if you want to maintain a healthy relationship with the people that help you run your business, you need to respect them. And if you ask them to turn away other business or to turn away time with their friends and their family, and you promise them, I'm going to pay you for 4 services, you better cut that fucking check for 4 services. You better pay them what you promised them, and not a week before the wedding being like, oh, actually, it's only going to be these number of services. That is so irresponsible and selfish as a business owner. If I were that person, guess what? I'm suddenly no longer available for any more dates that you ask me about. If you're like, hey, thanks so much for doing that or whatever, are you available on this day? I was like, sorry, not available anymore, because fuck you right back. Fuck you right back. I am not going to waste my time for somebody who doesn't respect me. As another business owner, as another artist, you should respect the time of the people. Remember, we're not selling services, we're selling time. And you're asking somebody to sell you their time for your business so you can sell it to somebody else and make a profit off of it. And now you're like, your time isn't really worth it. That's so rude. So please do not do that to people. If you are going to allow it, or if you're going to say, okay, the payment is still the same. If the bride owes $1,000 balance but wants to take somebody off, say a bridesmaid and her had a falling out, that bridesmaid's not even part of the bridal party anymore. And she's like, whatever, I understand, I still have to pay for her service. If the additional artist was supposed to do that service, you better still pay her for that. It's not just, oh, you ended up doing 3 because last minute so-and-so didn't show, so you're only getting paid for 3 services. You owe them the amount that you promised them. Thank you so much for tuning in. And like I mentioned at the very beginning of the episode, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel, just in case I do switch up the way that I distribute the podcast for a little bit over the summer, so that you don't miss any business building tips. We will be back next week. This episode is late just because it was spring break with my family. And to be honest, I got a little confused on the dates on the calendar. If you are a parent, you know what it can be like when things are different. I have kids who go to school in 2 different counties, so like their dates are just ever so slightly different. It's getting towards the end of the year for my senior. He's getting ready to graduate. So there's those kinds of things. Like, timing has just been a little off. It was just a whole bunch of stuff. And that is like the perfect way to introduce next week's topic, which I'm going to get ready to film here in a minute. But it is about balancing motherhood and entrepreneurship, and sometimes how one kind of takes precedence over the other, and we have to shift our priorities. I'm going to be talking about how to balance all of that. If you're watching this on the YouTube, the next episode will be available. It will pop up here when it's live. Otherwise, it'll be another video that you can go ahead and you can watch right now.